There, students. I'm here to talk to you about the new AP History DBQ. And the reason I say AP History and not just AP US History, AP European History, AP World History is that starting this year and next year for AP World History, there will be one rubric to rule them all. That's right, students. One rubric to rule them all. One rubric to find them. One rubric to bring them all and end the darkness! Wait. Yeah, I can get kind of carried away with the Lord of the Rings references, but bear with me because there's plenty more where that came from.
Is it secret? Is it safe?
So what is this one rubric that's going to be used for APUSH, AP Euro, AP World? Let's go ahead and get into it. First of all, it's a 7-point rubric. In the past, they used 9-point rubric scales. Now it's going to be a 7-point rubric, and then these 7 points are going to be broken down into categories. This is not a holistic rubric. This does not take into consideration the quality of your essay as a whole, but rather whether 7 specific criteria are met. The first 2 points are your thesis points, the first being that a thesis is present and credible, and then the second point, which I call the thesis excellent point. You get another point for that. The next 2 points come from the documents, that you use the documents. You made legitimate references to at least 6 documents. Typically there will be 6 or 7 documents in a DBQ. And then documents analyzed. You must analyze at least 4 documents according to POV or CAP, which I'll talk about later on. Then there's the outside information, 2 points. First of all, context, the forest, big picture. All right, this is where we're looking at can you take whatever's there in the document and the prompt and all that and paint a big picture around it. Then you would have your evidence. That's the trees, all right? So you need both the forest and the trees. And then finally, the last point is synthesis. That's the one that kind of gets everybody, and I'll kind of explain to you what that is. So let's get on with it. First of all, thesis present, okay? There is a thesis and it's credible. Presents a thesis that makes a historically defensible claim and responds to all parts of the question. Does more than just restate. Alright, so what you did here is that you respond to the entire question, and typically you're going to have a general statement weighing in on the prompt, and you're going to have a preview of points. You're going to have these 3 reasons that you are going to use to support your thesis, and you're going to preview those in your thesis. So if that's there, that thesis is present, then you get that point. Now, keep in mind that this thesis must be located either in the first or the last paragraph, the introduction or the conclusion. Readers tend to prefer that they see it in the introduction because you let the reader know what it is you're arguing. Sometimes they say in historical circles, tell them what you're going to say it, then tell them what you just said. The second point is what I call thesis excellent. All right, now this goes beyond just having a thesis, and this is actually a modification for the brand new rubric to say that, you know what, we're not just going to have a point for the thesis being there, but we're going to reward good thesis writing and furthermore, a thesis-driven essay. This essay develops and supports a cohesive argument that recognizes and accounts for historical complexity by explicitly illustrating relationships among historical evidence, such as contradiction, corroboration, and or qualification. And keep in mind that this is an excellent thesis. This isn't just one of those, okay, the thesis is there, it meets the criteria, check. This is a thesis that is excellent and also sets the stage for a thesis-driven essay. That the thesis isn't just there and then it's forgotten about in the body paragraphs. This thesis is compelling and it is argued and supported throughout the essay. So these are the first 2 points having to do with a thesis being present, and then another point if it's a great thesis and it's consistently supported throughout the essay. Moving on. So point 3, we're talking about documents referenced, all right, that you're going to see these 6 or 7 documents and you have got to make legitimate references to them, all right, that you've used them, that you've referred to something in the box, all right. It says that you use the content of at least 6 of the documents to support the stated thesis or a relevant argument. So if you have 7 documents, you can leave one out, but if there are 6, you need to use all of them. Now, this is what I call the lamp-loving point. If you've ever seen Anchorman, for another movie reference, Brick Tamlin, when he's looking around, he says, I love desk, I love carpet, I love lamp. And then they ask him, do you really love the lamp, or are you just looking at things and saying that you love them? I love lamp! So the thing is, when it comes down to it, for point number 3, it doesn't matter if you really love the lamp or not. If you look at the lamp and you say that you love it, you get that point, alright? So you made a legitimate reference to these documents and just didn't totally screw it up. That's point 3. Now moving on to point 4, where we need a little bit of substance. So point 4 has to do with documents analyzed. In order to get point 4, the writer explains the significance of author's POV, point of view, context, audience, and or purpose, which I call CAP, for at least 4 documents. That's point 3. Now moving on to point 4, where we need a little bit of substance. So point 4 has to do with documents analyzed. In order to get point 4, the writer explains the significance of author's POV, point of view, context, audience, and or purpose, which I call CAP, for at least 4 documents. Now we're on point 4, 4 documents. All right, so you have to reference 6 documents. You have to love the lamp 6 times, and then 4 times you need to demonstrate that you love it. Now you can either do that with POV, which of course if you took the AP Euro exam on the old format, then you would be familiar with this because it's the same sort of thing. So you've got that, or you can use some other things as well. So POV is point of view, and this is just acknowledging that in history, there aren't just facts, all right? History is not a science, per se. That everybody has their own vantage point. They've got a lens that they look at history, whether that be someone's race, class, or gender, maybe retrospective. I'm going to do some other videos on POV, and I've got some POV stuff on my website as well, tomrichey.net. But keep in mind that, that's kind of another story, but point of view, looking at what makes this person have this perspective, that you're looking at that perspective and you're evaluating that. For example, if I tell you that AP US History is the most important class that you'll ever take in your high school career, well, you would say, well, there is an AP US History teacher, and he's saying that because he would benefit from me thinking that that makes me take the class, okay? So that's why that's being said. And here I was thinking that AP Euro was the most important class ever. So in addition to POV, you have the option to use what I call CAP, all right? Context, audience, or purpose, all right? And you can use any of this stuff. You can use POV, context, audience, or purpose. So when we think about the context, and that's another point that we'll be moving on to in a second, is can you take this document and put it into a bigger picture? Like you think about documents, I tend to talk about, especially around the holidays, that documents are ornaments, all right? That your essay is the tree, all right? And you are using the documents to kind of ornament your tree, all right? And so the context, can you take this ornament and put it into a bigger picture? Put it on the tree. Can you give me the story behind this document? Do you know the situation behind it? Do you know the person that wrote it? Or something like that. Can you shed some additional light on where this document came from? Then there's the audience, okay? So if I'm talking to one person, I may say one thing, or if I'm talking to another person, I may say another thing. What if there's a student that is interested in AP US History and I want that student to take AP US History? And if I don't want that student to take the course, I may say something different. And that's the thing. So depending on who I'm talking to, then what I say could be different. something that I say in public versus something that I sent in a text message to a friend or something like that. The audience matters. Now also purpose. Why is this document being written? Why did this person write or say this? And if you can look into that, then you can earn this point. So you're looking at a person's perspective, you're looking at the context of the document, who the document was directed toward, and then why the document was created in the first place. So that is point 4, and that has to do with going a step beyond loving the lamp and actually demonstrating that you love it. Hey, watch this. Whoa, I disappeared. So now we move on to the outside information points, all right, where we're looking at context and evidence. All right, so first of all, there's point 5, contextualization. Situates the argument by explaining the broader historical events, developments, or processes immediately relevant to the question. All right, so you are painting a picture around it. You are showing something bigger. Now, also keep in mind it needs to be relevant, but you are putting these documents into the bigger picture and you're showing background. All right, so keep in mind that this has to be more than just a phrase or reference. Typically, multiple sentences is what they're looking for. And keep in mind what you're doing here is you are showing us the forest. All right, you're showing us the big picture. Or if you want to think in Lord of the Rings terms, you can think that this is the Shire.
Shire! Baggins!
So now that we have put the Shire together, we need to put some little hobbits in that Shire. And that's where we get to point 6, the evidence beyond the documents. And this is where the student provides an example or additional piece of specific evidence beyond those found in the documents to support or qualify the argument. Now keep in mind, must be 1, distinct from evidence used to earn other points, and 2, more than a mere phrase or reference. All right, so you want this outside evidence to be substantive. All right, you want it to be something that means something, not just a drive-by something. Now, drive-by stuff's good. If you know something that's relevant, put it there. But the more you flesh it out, the better that's going to go. Make the connections yourself. Don't expect the reader to make the connections for you. All right, so you're looking at this as putting little hobbits in the Shire, if you want to get all Lord of the Rings nerdy with me. Or you look at it as the trees. All right, context is the forest, the evidence would be the trees. Okay, now we get to synthesis, and this is what confuses everybody. People are like, what is synthesis? I think AP English has been having to do some kind of synthesis essay for a while, but we've never really had to do that in AP History circles, so what in the world is that? Extends the argument by explaining the connections between the argument and ... Text is the forest, the evidence would be the trees. Okay, now we get to synthesis, and this is what confuses everybody. People are like, what is synthesis? I think AP English has been having to do some kind of synthesis essay for a while, but we've never really had to do that in AP History circles, so what in the world is that? Extends the argument by explaining the connections between the argument and ... Now, before we get to the ... let's talk about what synthesis is. Synthesis is a lot like putting together a puzzle, and you've got all of these pieces, and you put them together. All right, so this is where you take things that are scattered about and you see a piece over here and you see a piece over here and over here, and you're thinking, okay, let me put them together, let me show relationships here and put those pieces together into one coherent whole. Okay, and this is kind of like where, you know, the big climactic moment where Frodo like goes on a Mount Doom and Gollum's like on his and you know, you know, that sort of thing, and woo, you know, all that kind of stuff. All right, okay. All right. Sorry if I just like spoiled Lord of the Rings for somebody, but you should have seen it or read it by now, or both, or whatever. You're probably not going to anyway. So really, this is what synthesis is. We're taking things that may not be together already, and we're putting them together in a way that makes sense. Alright, so if you're taking the AP US History exam, there are 2 ways that you can employ synthesis. Euro and World, there are 3. This is the only difference between any exam on the one rubric. Other than this, they're exactly identical. All right, one rubric to rule them all. So there are three types of synthesis, which I'm going to call historical, thematic, and interdisciplinary. And interdisciplinary is the one that is only for Euro and World. So first of all, there's historical, a development in a different historical period, situation, era, or geographical area. And here's where you kind of employ the thinking skill of comparison, where you're taking what you're talking about and you're thinking, you know, this is kind of like this, all right? So if I were to say, for example, and I've got some stuff on my website for this as well, that I'll try to link here through a card or something, but this is where you think, okay, hey, this free soil movement to try to keep slavery in the South, this is really a lot like the policy of containment during the Cold War, where the U.S. government tried to keep communism from gaining influence in other places. So this is where we take a connection between different, places or time periods or situations, and we're doing that within history. So we're taking what we are writing about and we're relating it to something else in a way that's relevant, okay? You can't just take like anything. I mean, you've tried to put together a puzzle before, and you can't take two pieces that don't fit together and try to make them fit together. Then there's thematic synthesis. Now, this is where you employ an additional course theme and or approach to history that is not the focus of the essay. So, for example, if this was a primarily political prompt, then if you apply some social analysis in a way that wasn't really brought out in the documents, then you could get that synthesis point. I think you're safer trying to go with the historical synthesis because it's the most straightforward, but the thematic synthesis is also an option. Now, if you are an AP Euro or AP World student, sorry APUSH, you will not have the pleasure of employing interdisciplinary synthesis. But Euro and World, have at it if that's your thing. A different discipline or field of inquiry such as economics, government and politics, art history, or anthropology. So you can employ that. Again, I think across the board, the historical synthesis is the most straightforward and safe way to go about it. But you're welcome to do any two of those or all three of them or any of those if that's what you want to do. Now, keep in mind that some people suggest putting the synthesis in a separate place in your essay. So, for example, maybe putting another body paragraph. But if you address this in a body paragraph somewhere and you've got several sentences, that's something you need to keep in mind, that this isn't just one sentence of synthesis. This should typically be something that is a little bit more fleshed out. So that concludes our 7 points. Let's review real quick. 2 points for thesis. 1 point for a thesis that is present and comprehensive. Another point for a thesis that is excellent and consistently argued throughout the essay. As far as the documents are concerned, 2 points. First of all, documents used. I love the lamp. Then, on 4 of the documents, I demonstrated that I love the lamp, that I understand the lamp, and all of that kind of stuff. I know the lamp's point of view. I know the lamp's context and audience and purpose and all that kind of stuff. Any one of those 4 things will do. Then 2 points for outside information. Context, the forest. Evidence, the trees, or the Shire and the hobbits, if you want to go that route. And then finally, synthesis. 1 point, all right, that you take something and put it together into a way that makes sense and fits and all of that good stuff. So that's that. Now, of course, I've got lots of content lectures for APUSH and AP European History, and also some more test-taking things that I'm going to be belting out. So if this has been helpful to you, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Tell your friends about my channel if you think they're struggling. TomRichey.net, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Find me on all 3 of those things. I'd love to dialogue with you, and you can kind of keep up what I'm doing and all of that kind of stuff. So thank you for watching, and I hope you do great on your DBQ. Till next time.